Um, Basically, I want to talk about what Singularity University is about. How many of you have actually heard about Singularity University? Okay, fair number of you, and fair number of you obviously haven't heard about it. I actually myself also haven't heard about it. About two and a half years ago, I was actually given a Smart State Fellowship from the Australian government to be an Entrepreneur in Residence Fellow. That's what EIR is. I have been an academic. I'm still an academic, actually. I'm a professor at Bond University on the Gold Coast and Griffith University, both on the Gold Coast, and I was the associate dean there. But I basically became, I guess, an entrepreneur about 12 years ago. And I was given this fellowship to help commercialize technology for the Gold Coast, and to bring together the industry and the universities together, and small SMEs, small, medium-sized companies, working with them. And one of the issues that I had was I was supposed to get them more interested in commercializing their technology. And the issues I had with the academics are that a lot of them come up to me and said, I just published this paper, it has fantastic review on the algorithms. I'd like to go file a patent now. As you know, you can't do that. Once you have basically revealed it to the world, you can't actually file a patent. There's no novelty in it anymore. So part of my job was to create awareness of IP and also to teach them how to pitch. And I'm also a founding member of the Gold Coast Angel Investor Group on the Gold Coast. And we use a software called AngelSoft, which is now called Gust. And the founder of that company is David Rose, who was the faculty head of entrepreneurship at Singularity. And he allowed us to use a 1-hour video of his lecture at Singularity on how to pitch. You can actually, Google David Rose, and there are some 5-minute pitch that he actually, a 5-minute video clip on how to pitch. But this was an hour-long one, a one-time use of it. And I never heard of Singularity till that day. And I was super impressed with the way the lecture went. And I thought, my goodness, what is Singularity University all about? So I was a late applicant to the program. In 2011, you could apply all the way up to, I think, the end of March or end of April. And what happened was, I basically found out what Singularity was, applied to it, and luckily enough to get into the program. So I'll tell you what the program's about. So you'll see me in a lot of these photos, not that I'm photogenic, I know I'm not, but because of copyright issues. So a lot of it, so it's actually located in NASA Ames Research Center in Silicon Valley, right next to Google. So what you see here is the Aerodome. If you go now to Silicon Valley, that Aerodome is totally stripped bare now. What happened was, before the budget crisis, they stripped it bare and they're going to refurbish it, and they ran out of money, so they couldn't put it back on again. That's the bad news. The good news is the Google guys said, well, we will pay for it and put it all back up again. We just want to park our private jets in there. So that's happening. So Singularity University is sponsored, it was a non-profit. It now is kind of what I call a B corporation, which means that it does not have to maximize shareholders' profit. It just follows the constitution of what the company's goal is, which is basically to use exponential technology to solve grand challenges. So you see this 10 to the power 9 plus thing. What it means is that they want to use technology to impact the life of 1 billion people within 10 years. And it's sponsored by Genentech, Autodesk, Nokia, Google, Kauffman Foundation, and so on and so forth, or Cisco. All the major guys basically are the sponsors for it. So what's inside? The mission is to educate, inspire, and empower leaders to understand and utilize what we call exponential advancing technologies to address grand challenges. And I'll talk more about the exponential technology part of it. It was essentially started by two persons, Dr. Ray Kurzweil and Peter Diamandis. Peter Diamandis, as most of you know, was the founder of the X Prize. For those who don't, the X Prize is essentially a competition that was set up a few years ago to inspire people to bring down the cost of technology. So Peter Diamandis, if you've actually seen him, is actually quite short. But his whole life, he wanted to be an astronaut. I want to go to space, I mean. So he was very inspired by Charles Lindbergh, basically flying across the Atlantic Ocean to win a $26,000 prize money. That competition spurred enough technology innovation to bring down the cost of travel across the Atlantic. So within 10 years, people were flying across the Atlantic. So he wanted to do the same for space. I think it costs like $20 million per astronaut using the shuttle. If you can do a private enterprise that can bring people up to space, you would actually bring down the cost and make it viable. So he created the X Prize for the X Prize competition for space. The first person that can fly an aircraft 100 kilometers above space, land and fly again within 48 hours wins $10 million. He did this without getting sponsors, okay? And somebody won. So he had an issue of trying to raise money because Richard Branson initially wasn't interested because he only invests in technology that's proven. But when he actually won the prize, then, as you know, Virgin Galactic came along and bought the rights to it, and he raised $5 million from the Ansari family and got the other $5 million, and off it went. So at the end of this year, I think, the first Space Galactic will be flying will be flying out to space. So other X prizes that are going on is the Lunar Prize. Basically, the first person that can land a robot on the moon, move it 50 meters, take a photo of it of itself, and send it back to Earth, wins $40 million in prize money and $40 million in contracts from NASA. I think there are 19 companies around the world taking part in this competition. So that is the Space Galactic replica of it on the Googleplex right next to NASA. Now, let's go back let me go back and show you, that's basically about Peter Diamandis, and he wrote a book called The Abundance, The Future is Better Than You Think. If you haven't read the book, I really encourage you to have a look at it. It basically talks about how technology can change things very, very rapidly at an exponential rate. It basically talks about, I mean, the cover of the book looks like an aluminum foil. The reason for that is because he used aluminum as an example. Aluminum used to be the most expensive metal in the 19th century. Napoleon III actually served his guest of honor, the King of Siam, with aluminum plates and aluminum cutleries and so forth, because it was the most expensive metal in the world, because of the extraction process was very, very difficult. It needed very high melting point and so forth, until they invented electrolysis. So he basically showed that, once they invented electrolysis, aluminum, which is like the fourth or fifth most abundant element on Earth, is so cheap that you just use and throw it away nowadays. So that's Peter Diamandis. Ray Kurzweil, if you don't know him, when he was 17 years old, he wrote the first computer-generated program. And he was very inspired to try and help blind people read and get access to books. So what he did was he invented the reading machine for the blind. He also is an inventor for a CCD scanner for almost the scanning machines. Because of his invention for the reading machine for the blind, he became good friends with Stevie Wonder. Stevie Wonder was very thankful that now, book, all the books in the library was available to him. But he had an issue though. He couldn't compose music easily because obviously he's blind and there are a lot of instruments that he couldn't actually use easily. So he asked Ray if he could create a very good music synthesizer. And he did. So if you notice all the bands have Kurzweil on it, that's actually Ray's invention. So currently he wrote a few books, and one of the books that he wrote is called The Singularity is Near. He basically says that computers are moving at such a fast rate that within 25 years, you will actually have a computer powerful enough to simulate every single neuron in your brain. So you can download your entire life, merge into a singularity with a machine, like living in a matrix. So you can't actually tell the difference. I mean, in a way, the Android glasses is the first step towards that. Soon you wouldn't be able to tell the difference between reality and what's real and what's not. And having said that, Ray actually has agreed to join Google to be the director of engineering for the project for creating the human mind. His new book is actually called Creating the Mind. So a very interesting guy. So the two of them got together to found Singularity University. What exponential curves are, basically the speed of technology, that doubling in its rate of improvement. As you can see here, right now we have the computational power to simulate perhaps an insect brain and perhaps soon a mouse brain. It'll soon take us some time to simulate one human brain, but by 2050, we will have the computational power to simulate all the human brains. What are you going to do with all this computational power? So that's the question that you have to ask. I mean, even when I was lecturing in AI 20 years ago maybe, I basically, I think my old university at USC, basically had the technology to implant wetware to hardware, so you can simulate neuron firing. So in a way, you could download your memory and brains into a machine. So if you've got a crappy day, you could always boot up to a day that you're great, as long as you remember to back up. Okay. So as I said, Singularity is the mission of it, and I'll tell you what exponential steps are. So a linear step, right? If you take you take 1 meter per linear step. Our mind is very good at perceiving linear type of technology. So if you take 30 steps, you walk a meter a step, you'll be 30 meters away, right? If you take an exponential step, each step you double the next step. So first step you take a meter, second step 2, next 4, 8, and so on. In 30 steps, how far do you think you've gone? You have gone 26 times around the Earth. You have gone over 1 billion meters. And that's how fast technology is moving. And I'll talk more about this exponential technology stuff and why Singularity University is emphasizing on it. So Singularity University select 80 people every year from around the world to go to the program. So every year they have about 35 to 36 countries, 80 people from around the world. I went there in 2011. There were 2,200 applicants for 80 places. Last year there were over 4,000 applicants for 80 places. That became really overwhelming for the university, so they decided that they actually want to hold competition. So they only take 65 students in now, and then the rest, they reserve a place, maybe 60 students. They have competitions held around the world. And the winner of each competition in the country that they take part in wins a scholarship to go to Singularity. So it's a mix of people that you'll find. If you apply directly to the program, the 3 criteria that they normally use is your academic skill level, but that's not necessarily the only criteria. There are a number of my classmates that actually didn't finish university. I mean, you got people like, Bill Gates, Zuckerberg, Jobs, and all that actually never finished university. Then your entrepreneurial skill, and thirdly, your passion to solve grand challenges. And one corollary to that is that they also like it if you actually work overseas or live overseas for a while. So it's a very diverse program. Last year they had a real issue. They actually had a Sudanese girl come to the program, and as you know, Sudan is still classified as a terrorist nation. So, and you actually live and stay in NASA for 10 weeks. So NASA had this regulation that they basically had to label her as a known terrorist from and Singularity had a lot of issues because she could only stay in a dorm or the classroom. Anywhere else within NASA, she has to be escorted by her fellow classmates. And also, if any federal government officers that come and give a talk at Singularity, they have to be told that there is a known terrorist in the audience. Are there any known terrorists in the audience here? No, okay. Just checking. So basically the program itself, how will you impact 1 billion people in the next decade? These are the areas that you get to work on a project. The first 7 weeks, you get lectured from people that you only hear from TED Talks. The final 3 weeks, you go visits to Google, Facebook, Tesla. There's so many trips and scientific expeditions that you can go out with your classmates that you can't possibly do all of them. So depending on what your interest is, you pick 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 and go to those. And then at the end, the final 3 weeks, you work on a project that will impact the life of 1 billion people, and you try to canvas your classmates to join you to form a team. Any company that gets spins off from Singularity, the university takes 2%. So the global health, water, energy, environment, food, education, security, poverty, and they used to have space too, because NASA was a sponsor. So these are the areas that you can work on, and you try to canvas your idea to your fellow classmates. So the competitions we hold in Australia, this year we actually managed to get our inaugural Grand Challenge going. We need basically a sponsor for about $30,000 for the prize money to send 1 Malaysian to the program. So if we can get that up and going, hopefully we can get a Malaysian to the program besides myself. That would be great. Essentially, you get a chance to pitch your idea in your local competition to impact the life of 1 million people. And if you win, you get selected and go to the program in Singularity. Then you pitch to your fellow classmates. And if you can get them to join you, you might form a team or a company, and you get access to a lot of VCs and so forth, who are all basically sponsors of Singularity or partner Singularity in some form or other. So this is the 10 weeks program. As you can see, you start with intros, your grand challenges, your core curriculum, your site visits, your workshops, and I'll show you what, things that I've done when I was there in 2011. So they have the graduate study program, which is the main program that they push, and those who can't afford, they actually have scholarships and so forth. They want you to try to raise money on your own if you can. All the other programs, the funding actually goes to feed the scholarship program for the graduate study program. That's the main program they want to push. So they do run executive programs that runs for 7 days. Then they got the Future Med program, which is geared towards the medical area, that runs for 5 days. And they got coming out with Future X, and they can customize some other programs. They have an online platform, but they have looked at trying to have an online education program, but they find that the issue is that it's very difficult to hold it outside of Silicon Valley, because you need the ecosystem. You can't go to Google. You can't go visit a company like Google outside of Silicon Valley easily. So, so the whole ecosystem there works quite well. They now have the Singularity Labs, which is an incubator. So the companies that come out of Singularity goes into the incubator and get funded through VCs and other ventures and so forth, and get mentored and so forth. And internationally, they are trying to have innovation hubs, and they want to work actually with incubators around the world, particularly areas where they have an ambassador or some alumni in that program. And the Global Impact Competition is the one that I managed to launch last month in Australia. And we got David Roberts, who's the VP of Singularity University, come down and launch it, and gave a very good talk. I think it's actually on my Facebook link or LinkedIn. So if you guys link into me, you can log on and have a look at the talk he gave. And obviously they want to create a global community. So a typical day in a program, sorry, a bit hard to see on it, I think, but you work from Saturday to Sunday, really. I mean, maybe you have only Sunday off to do your laundry, really. And you got AI robotic lectures, and then you got tech shop, you go visit Autodesk, a whole bunch of stuff that you're doing all the time. It's a really full-on program. So why do all this stuff? Because if you guys have looked at some of the recent news, like the Stradivarius, 3D printers, you can 3D scan a Stradivarius, a violin that previously only a craftsman could do it. You could 3D scan the entire thing. Every nook and cranny of the wood can be replicated, and basically you can 3D print an entire Stradivarius printer that would play almost as good as the real thing. And then, as I mentioned to you, connecting your wetware, your brain, to a hardware. And Watson, if you have seen, you guys have seen Jeopardy. It's, I guess, would be like the Malaysian Jutaria, right, or one of those quiz games. And Watson beat, 3 human contestants or 2 human contestants. And Watson, I think last month, has just been approved by the medical board in the US to provide medical advice to people. So it's a very powerful AI program that essentially can diagnose and give advice on medical areas better than human doctors. Our brain, right, due to our reptilian brain, the amygdala, basically, we always look at the negative side of things. Like, you notice the news is always negative. Okay, there's a reason for that. We need to survive. So we had to pick up all this negative news so that we can survive. But I think we kind of moved away from reptilian into more mammalian, hopefully, most of us. But if you look at the positive things, right, human life expectancy has more than doubled. Infant mortality has, been reduced by 90%. There are a lot of positive things that we don't seem to focus on. Just give an example, right, American example. This is only comparing 1900 to 2000, right? Transportation, from Boston to Chicago used to cost 1 month of your salary. Now it's half a day's wage. Your telephone calls, right, used to, like calling New York to LA will cost you 19 hours of work. It's almost free now, right? So obviously the most common example of exponential growth is Moore's law, the doubling of computational power every 18 months, right? So you can see computers been growing exponentially, doubling in power every couple of years. But what you might not know is the cost of sequencing your genes, right? Cost of sequencing your genes has fallen from $1 billion 10 years ago to less than $5,000. I think maybe it's almost down to $1,000 now today, right? From $1 billion to basically $1,000. Now, why is that important? it has opened up whole new fields now. I'm not sure whether you guys are aware of genomics studies and stuff like pharmacogenomics. Pharmacogenomics is the study of prescribing medication according to your genetic makeup. As you know, most of the medication that's prescribed to us are tested on a set population, probably in America or Europe, and the prescription dosage is actually the same one that's given to everybody. I mean, the example of Vioxx, where it actually cause heart attack in certain people. Some of the medication that I might be taking for an illness that I have may not actually work properly with my genetic makeup. It might actually have a negative effect. So there's a whole new area now called pharmacogenomics where you prescribe medication according to your genetic makeup. Then there's the area of epigenetics, how your genes turn on and off depending on what you've been exposed to. When you're sick, you go see a doctor, how often do they ask you, where have you been, what have you been exposed to? They don't, right? They just try and treat the symptom. And this is a whole new area where they need to see which gene get exposed to what factors that actually causes you to have inflammation and then causes other problems. So the cost of sequencing genes has fallen faster than Moore's law, and it's still falling. So one day it might even be free, and you have big implications on the health sector. Ubiquitous technology, as you can see, you got the Maasai warriors, you got the Malaysia, you got Great Wall of China, and an Indian guy there is running a call center. Oh, thank you very much. Anyway, so basically, mobile phones are everywhere, right? Africa, penetration of phone in 2000 was 2%. It's now 70%. That's what I meant by exponential growth. What's the big deal? Well, this Maasai warrior with a smartphone has access to more information than Bill Clinton did when he was the president of the United States. So that's the big deal, right? Because if you actually dematerialize a mobile phone that you have right now in your pocket, right? I think some of you are not young enough to remember Michael Pang, my tuition teacher, used to had the first video recorder, and we were experimenting in video dubbing. And it costs us a lot of money to buy video recorders. Look at it. I mean, it costs you, $1,245 to just get a video player, an encyclopedia, and a CD, and so on. And that's what you have now in your pocket, right? And this is what the Maasai warrior has now. They're skipping all this part of the technology curve that we actually had to go through and jumping straight. It's kind of leveling the playing field. So in terms of the impact of what this has, is actually pretty dramatic. This is an example I always give because mobile commerce is an area of interest to me. I don't know whether you guys heard about this African guy when mobile phone first came to his village. There was only one place in his village on a treetop that you could get signal. So he was an entrepreneur. He charged $5 for anybody to go up there to make a call. And now he lives in this. No, I'm kidding. Everything you see here is 3D printed. That's the other big thing that's coming, right? My favorite is the chocolate, obviously. But some of these items that you see here can never be made by human hands, okay? The car is totally 3D printed. The parts and so on, you just have to assemble it. The fabric, you can 3D print fabric, you can 3D print glass, titanium, steel, and so forth. That's going to revolutionize the technology. Think about it. It's a replicator, right? If I give you a 3D printer in a village in Africa to make stuff, 80% of the parts you can manufacture from that 3D printer. So you can make another one. And you can make another one, it can replicate itself. So NASA is obviously using it, and so is the US military. So let's say, a bolt or a screw broke in space. To send you a screw from Earth is going to cost them a bomb. It'd be easier to send you the design and you 3D print it in wherever you are. Then the exponential growth of information. Well, Mindvalley being the job they've been doing, I bet the information database has been growing exponentially. I don't know whether you know, from the start of human civilization until 2003, all the books that were ever written and ever published, be it in Tamil or in Chinese or in Egyptian or Phoenician or whatever, we produce about 5 exabytes of data. That's 5 billion gigabytes of data. Okay, that's from civilization to 2003. We produce the same information now in 10 minutes. So just think about the exponential growth of that, which is why when you talk about data mining and stuff like that, we're talking about big data mining, like data mining huge amount of data. Now you'll be thinking like, where did all this information come from? Think about the number of video that you uploaded, the resolution of your camera improving. These are all data points. MRI scans have been improving. So what you want to look at is basically, for those who are interested in the potential investment opportunities, you want to look where the next $100 billion industry is going to come from. We have gone through, obviously, social media and so on. I believe the next one is actually the biotech, the synthesis biology stuff. Bringing biotech into homes, into garage, not just in the silos of the universities and research centers. AI and robotic and 3D printing, and further down the track, nanotechnology. Nanotechnology is still quite a way off, so I'll talk a little bit about it. The speakers that you see at Singularity, you got people like Vint Cerf, who is the father of the internet. Dean Kamen, if you know, Dean Kamen is the guy that invented the Segway, but he also invented something called a slingshot. He invented this device for people with dialysis problems, so you can filter out stuff and replace your kidney. But he said, well, you know, this is actually cheap to produce a good filter. Why don't I use it to filter water? Water is a big issue. So he developed Slingshot, which is now going to be incorporated in, I think, most of the factories in Africa with Coca-Cola to provide fresh water. Aubrey Gray, the guy with the beard down here, looks like a guy from Hogwarts. He's from Cambridge, actually. He's a very interesting guy. You should watch his TED Talk. He talks about the 7 reasons why we age. And every one of those 7 reasons, they are working on a current solution. So he claims that if you can live for 25 to 30 years, you will be able to live another 25 to 30 years because of the technology that's coming up. And you could live forever up to 1,000 years if you don't get run down by a bus. So, and Craig Venter, he's an amazing guy. He's actually in 2010. He's the guy that developed the first artificial life. He created an artificial bacteria. He designed the entire DNA of the bacteria in a computer. If you sequence the DNA of this bacteria, it actually multiplies, you implant it into the shell of a bacteria, and it starts multiplying and become a living colony. If you sequence the DNA of the bacteria, you will find the 42 names of the scientists that work on the project, its own website, and its own email address. What's the big deal, right? What's the big deal? It's a big deal because, think about it. I mean, you know, you can program a synthetic bacteria. You can actually make an algae that is more energy efficient than a conventional algae, or target a particular pathogen in your body. So, and then these are the faculty members that we have. I mean, you know, Dan Barry, he's a 3-time astronaut, and he gave the first talk at Singularity. It was totally inspiring. I mean, he's basically talking about finding your passion and sticking to it. What happened was he, like Peter Diamandis, also wanted to go to space. He wanted to be an astronaut since he was a kid. He'd jump off roof and stuff like that. So he picked up a degree. You know, he picked up a medical degree. He picked up a PhD in AI. You know, when he graduated when he was 21 years old, applied to NASA, rejected. So he applied a second year. You know, along the way, like I said, he picked up you know, a couple of doctorates, medical degree and doctorates. Applied for 14 years. Every single year he was rejected. On the 14th year, his boss, the dean of the university, said, "Look, Dan, you know, you're getting old. Why don't you just give up, right? I'm tired of writing these letters and, you know, you never get in anyway." So he said, "Well, I'll give them a call." So he called up NASA and said, "Hi, I'm Dan Barry." And said, "Oh yeah, we know who you are. You've been applying for the last 14 years. We'd like to call you for an interview." So he went for the interview. He got that job. He flew to space 3 times and did 2 or 3 spacewalks. So there you go. So this is Dan Barry with Peter Diamandis and a telepresence robot. This is one of my passions, actually, creating this for aged care. We built this for less than $600, and this was 2 years ago. It was nothing more than an Android tablet, a broomstick pole, and an iRoomba robot. Because Peter Diamandis' wife gave birth to a pair of twins in Los Angeles, so he couldn't give us a lecture live. So he controlled this robot and gave us a lecture. The guy on the left is Phil Rossdale. He's the father of Avatar. He's the guy that founded Second Life. And this is one of my heroes, Ralph Merkle. Ralph Merkle, if you guys are into technology, if you heard of PGP, you know, the encryption for email, he's one of the founders, he's one of the inventors. But now he's more renowned for his expertise and his deep voice, expertise in nanotechnology, especially in nanomolecular manufacturing, where you take tiny little atoms to manufacture stuff. Anybody want to guess what this is? No, it's not. It's not the Death Star. It's actually respirocytes. These are nano machines that can carry oxygen more efficiently than your blood cells, than your leukocytes. Rumor has it that it's already, the US Navy SEALs already have it. I can't say anything about that, but what it does is if you inject this into your bloodstream, you can literally stay underwater for 4 hours without breathing. And if you go to my blog, I think last year there was a micro, not a nanocyte, like this is a nano-sized one, a micro-sized one in UK. They're using it in the ambulances. So if somebody's lungs collapse during a fire, you inject this into your bloodstream, you can basically survive for 30 minutes without breathing. But it's only microcyte. This is actually a nanocyte. And this is obviously more far-fetched, but they're working on it. It won't be long. This is actually a nanobot that will go into your bloodstream, see a pathogen of a cancer cell and zap it before it actually attacks your body. So not everything was just technology, right? Why are we doing this? Okay, this guy inspired me, right? His name is Ewan Wadongo. He was a CNN hero in 2010. This guy, I didn't know who he was when I did this to him, the Asian thing. He is actually Anish Chopra. He is the first chief technology officer of the White House. He reports to Obama. So what was interesting about him was what he told us. I mean, I don't know whether you guys know this. If you are an Indian citizen and you went to Stanford or Harvard or MIT or Princeton or any other top university and you want to apply for a green card, a skilled labor, guess how long you have to wait? Anybody? 70 years, 70. If you're Chinese, 20 years. Okay, that's because the US government has this policy, right, where they only allow each country 7.2% of the total 132,000 visas that are available. Okay, this is crazy. So Vivek Wadhwa, who is a very outspoken Washington Post journalist and also VP for Singularity and Stanford and Duke and all that stuff. He was telling me when he was lecturing at Duke, he used to ask his Indian students, like, how many of you are going to stay in the US when you graduate from the engineering school? Like, everybody put their hand up. And this time when he asked them, they all laughed at him. And they said, why? We wait 70 years, we go back to India, we are like lords. The companies will hire us and we can move faster. And that's true. The Chinese, when I was there, the Chinese are recruiting not only the Chinese students to go back, they're recruiting everybody. In fact, the biggest gene sequencing machines, buyers of the machines for sequencing the genes, that are all mainly made in the US, is the Beijing Genomics Institute. They're sequencing not just the human genome, they're sequencing everything that tastes good. Because that's going to be the future, right? So, basically who owns the DNA information can make, food that tastes much, much better. So it's such a big problem in the US. Vivek Wadhwa testified at the US Congress where Texas Instrument HR, VP of HR said, I don't understand our policy in America where we take the best brains in the world, train them in our best universities, and then send them back to compete with us. Because Texas Instrument, 80% of, I think 70 or 80% of their revenue comes from IP. And they say we can't hire any American PhDs in the STEM areas, that fit our criteria. We may have to move out of the US. So much so that the VCs in California anyway, has come up with a few ideas. One is called C-State, S-E-A-S-T-E-D-D-I-N-G, Seed Institute. They're building a platform. They're going to anchor it 12 kilometers from the coast of California in international waters. And they're going to create an incubator. No, I'm serious. So basically, you'll be incubated there, and you can go back and forth to San Francisco by ferry. So that's the next Mindvalley. So this guy, I did some of my work based on his work. This is Andreas Wagen. He left, when he graduated, he joined Amazon and became the chief scientist of Amazon.com. Now he's back in Stanford as a professor in social media. Notice his t-shirt, there's a QR code. Can you see the QR code on his t-shirt there on the right? On the two QR codes there. The reason why he has a shirt is because he was showing us that he gave these shirts to all his PhD students and research students. So whenever you guys take a photo of a student, if you have a QR code reader, it will immediately send him information on where the student is, and send a photo and everything so you can track them. So that's a good way to track your employees. This is Carl Bass. Carl Bass is the CEO of Autodesk. He basically talks about the Internet of Things. You guys heard of Internet of Things, right? Like the Philips Lux bulb. You can control the entire mood lighting from your iPad. So when you come home, you want to have an ambiance of twilight, you could do that. So he talks about how everything will be connected, on the internet, even your light bulbs and so forth. This guy is really interesting. This guy's name is Astro Teller. Astro Teller. His grandfather, one of his grandfather, is Edward Teller, the guy that developed the atomic bomb and also the founder of the Lawrence Livermore Laboratory. His other grandfather is also a Nobel Prize winner in physics. But he is the head of Google skunkworks, all the Google Glass, all the high-tech, really high-end stuff. The lecture he gave was really, really interesting, and you should go to Singularity site and watch the video if you haven't. He talks about how in Google, as you know, it's a long process to get hired in Google. If you get hired in Google, you obviously, is somebody that's really innovative and so forth. So what he told me was really, really interesting. He said that when an engineer come up to him and said they want to work on a project that they think is going to be a fantastic hit, he said, hey, hold on, I'll give you a 6 months bonus. Forget about it. I mean, it's like counterintuitive, right? Why would we hire a really brilliant guy and then tell them, like, don't tell me your ideas, just forget about it, go back and do whatever you're doing? He says, very simple. Because if you're really passionate about it, you would do it anyway. But if you're not passionate about it, if I give you a whole team and the budget for running it for 6 months, and then you come back to me after 6 months, well, it doesn't work, I will wasted 6 months of everybody's effort instead of just 6 months of your salary. So that's a really interesting concept that he had. So this is Vinod Koshal. He's actually holding my phone because Vinod Koshal, if you don't know, is the co-founder of Sun Microsystems. Because this phone has got an EKG device that you can put, some of you actually can come up and have a look at if you like. It will take readings of your heart and send it to the cloud so they can actually tell whether you're having a heart attack or not, or get a EKG reading. So it has already saved 3 lives. It was invented by a friend of mine on the Gold Coast, but couldn't get any funding, so he went to US. Vinod put in about 7 mil, and Qualcomm put in about 7 mil. And now the product is actually in the market. It's one of the fastest track product from the FDA, so it's actually approved. But unfortunately, you can't buy it unless you are a doctor or prescription from a medical doctor in the US at the moment. So, amazing, amazing stuff. So the backstage tour, I'll show you some of the places we go. So this is the backstage tour of NASA. Its original name, they don't like to be called NACA. It's the National Aerospace Commission on Aeronautics. So this is where they develop, things like your flight control system and so forth. This is the crane that lifts the planes that they test up to Mach 12 times the speed of sound. So you stick it in there in the wind tunnel testing. And the amazing thing, right, for nerds like me, I was going to say us, but I don't want to insult you. So, you get to walk around the supercomputer center in NASA and take photos. This is at the time the 7th fastest computer in the world. So these are all the banks of SGI machines and all that. These are all the backup drives, robotic arm that backs it all up. But the thing is that they spent all the money on the equipment, but they didn't have any money left to put on backup power supply. So when it's a blackout, only 10% of these machines run. And this is pretty scary because when a space shuttle flies, they actually simulate the whole thing on a hyper wall. So, if anything goes wrong, they can see it immediately. So this is a hyper wall where all the work of the supercomputer, let me see the video works. Yeah, so this is the propeller of the helicopter. As you can see, the turbulence flow of the wind and so forth from the helicopter wind. And this is the ocean wave, real-time simulation of all the ocean waves in the world, from NOAA, and so forth. And this is what they use a supercomputer for. And this of interest to me because I did some work in the weather forecasting in tidal stuff. Oh. So you can see the Hurricane Katrina forming and so forth in real time. It takes satellite data, NOAA data, and stuff like that. So this is a flight simulator. You get to go on it. So at Singularity, you can go on a number of different programs depending on your interest. This is one that everybody can go to. But if you really want to you want to do the space shuttle simulator, they only can do 6 people in the whole program out of 80. So the way that Singularity select people for that program is that you actually got to go on a Microsoft flight simulator and pass a test that Dan Barry will administer. So you will have to fly, I think, a 737 from Moffett Field, NASA, to San Francisco, and you'll tweak with it so that your engine dies or something, and as long as you don't crash and die, then you are allowed to go and fly the space shuttle simulator. and the 747 simulator. I don't think it really worked because when I went there, one of these simulator was actually broken by one of my classmates because, you know, so it'll take 2 weeks to fix it. Okay, the good news, okay? I mean, I told you, you guys are going to live longer, you're going to be healthier and all this stuff, right? Well, where are we all going to live, right? We only have one Earth. So the good news is NASA told us that they found water on Mars, so they can terraform Mars and make it habitable. So we can actually migrate to Mars. That's the good news. The bad news is a one-way ticket. You can't come back because the gravitational force is about 1/3. So, you know. Anyway, this is the Moon Express X showed us a video. Like there are about 9 companies in NASA that basically are looking to go to the moon to mine the moon for platinum and helium-3, which is required. Helium-3 is actually required for cold fusion. Because they found water on the moon, they can basically get more energy than they actually gone to the moon with. So this is the traffic control flight simulator system. And you know what really, you know, the reason I took that photo was because Qantas was actually there and was still grounded, you know, even without the strikes. So even in the simulation, Qantas was actually on strike. This is the US Air Force Drone Research Center in NASA. It's an amazing thing. They allow us to take photos of this too. This is only a small drone. That is a full helicopter that they're stripping off and converting into a full drone that actually allow them, well actually I think it's operational now. They actually put a 55 gigapixel camera and they use it for recon in Afghanistan and Iraq. Okay, this is the site visits to Google and so on. So these guys, right, they're the most cushy job in Google, right? These are like security guards for Google, like fighting off nerds. How hard can that be? I mean, you know, that's why I put this photo up here. What I love about Google is that you can be in any office in Google, but you have, the policy is that you cannot be more than 150 feet away from food and drinks, all free. Shark oysters every day if you want. It's amazing. I love Google. That's the Google bicycles, and as you know, there's a Google Android office. So every time Google comes out with a new, ice cream sandwich or eclair or honey, each of the new Android version, they actually bring out one of these sculptures. That's the Google Street Map car, the infamous one that snap a lot of photos that some people complain about. And that's the Google bicycle that you can go drive around in. This is a Google stealth navigation car, right? They converted a Prius to this. This is an older version. I think they got about 13 cars now. And that's the other big thing that's happening, if you guys don't know. 3 states in America has already approved self-navigation car, Florida, Nevada, and California. When I was there, this car did 160,000 miles, no accident, until I was there. It wasn't me. Some Google employee knocked the car from the back. See, you can't trust humans. So I think it has now done 330,000 miles now, and it's still safe. So this is amazing. I mean, and the way it works is obviously it uses LiDAR, laser, and radar. So it knows where everybody is and so forth. Facebook. Facebook was a totally different culture for me. I think it's a generation gap maybe, but people are much younger there, and you're not allowed to take any photos except what you see here. And you don't even see that Facebook moniker on the wall anymore. This was the old office. They actually moved into Sun's old office in Menlo Park. So what happened now, all you see is a moniker of the like sign. And I said, why? So, well, we don't want our fans to disrupt our work, but also protesters. So, and you notice that in the Google lobby, in the Facebook lobby, every time somebody links to somebody else on Facebook, it lights up. There's a big dark spot there. That's China. And then Facebook wall, you can just write some stuff in there. And this is the Autodesk gallery, 3D printed gallery. Everything you see here is 3D printed. Like some of this stuff, right? You can only be 3D printed. And are you guys all familiar with 3D printing? Or? Yeah. So it's additive manufacturing, right? Just adding layers onto it and so forth. But what really inspired me was this guy, Scott Summit. He designed prosthetic limbs for people who have lost their limbs, but he makes it look good. So that lady lost her leg, it matches her dress. And this bikey, it blends into his bike. He 3D prints them, but he designs it so it looks good. So you're no longer embarrassed with an artificial limb and so forth. In fact, if you believe in transhumanism, right? You can enhance your ability beyond your biological legs anyway. Obviously, the negative side I have to show you, as you know, the 3D printed gun. So, like the London Olympics, right? There's no point trying to prevent somebody from carrying a gun to London, right? All they got to do is bring a 3D printer and print his own gun. So energy. So I was talking to a friend here about energy. So do you guys know what's the cost of a barrel of oil? It's about $100, 90, $100, right? Do you know how much it costs for a barrel of oil to actually get transported and used in Afghanistan or Iraq? Afghanistan mainly. $26,000, okay? Because you have to protect it, you have to have armed guards, all the kind of stuff. So these guys, and one of these companies, they created a foldable bed solar panel that tracks the sun that can fold up into a flat bed and parachute down, and then you can use it. And obviously has storage for night use and so forth. Even though it's expensive, it's still cheaper than fueling $26,000 of per barrel of oil. This is the National Ignition Facility at the Lawrence Livermore Laboratory, and these are only photos I can show you too. It's highly secure, and you got to have a radiation badge in case you get been exposed, inadvertently to some radiation. So what they're doing here is they're firing 190 laser beams into one single atom to try and create cold fusion, and they need helium-3 for that. So you can watch the video actually on YouTube if you like. This is going to show you the cost of air conditioning for the US military troop is more than the budget for NASA. Okay? And this is the budget for NASA, right? I mean, in 2011, and that's the US military budget, and that's total budget of NASA ever since it was formed in 1958. It doesn't even meet the budget of the US military in 1 year. So that's how little money is being spent, and the payoff from NASA is huge. A lot of the things that we take for granted were actually developed for space exploration and stuff like that. See, this is the big area that I think that we really should, on the educational side, we should really get our kids aware of what's happening. Synthesis biology. This is my good friend, my classmate from Uruguay. We're having what they call a spit party, right? It's actually called a spit party. So you spit into this test tube. It gets sent to 23andMe. Have you guys heard of 23andMe, right? 23andMe is a company for sequencing genes that was started by Sergey Brin's, the founder of Google's wife. And they sequence your genes, and within 6 weeks, they email you data or information, and then you can check and see all kind of interesting facts about your genetic makeup. So I'll show you mine. I believe in open source. Okay, so basically you can check your ancestry, what kind of diseases you might get, what kind of medication has what kind of effect on you. So this is mine, right? So I have a higher risk of, for example, age-related macular degeneration of the eye. So what I should do is perhaps have more regular eye checkup and take lutein or whatever that, at least I am aware of it. So it tells you all these things. It even tells you things like my earwax type is dry in case, you want to know. I don't suffer from the alcohol flush reaction. Like, how some Asians drink and they turn red. So I don't have that. So, yeah, so there's a lot of interesting stuff like that. But what was really interesting was this. Because I'm a male, so I can get both the X and the Y chromosome, so I can see where my heritage is from. So my dad, my grandfather from my dad's side was from Hainan Island. So this is where the map is generally, very Asian, right? A bit of Siberia, a bit of New Zealand, but mainly, totally Asian. My mom is from, my mom's grandparents, my mom's parents are from Fuzhou, which is a southern province in China. But look at this. I'm highly correlated to the Native American Indians. So I'm going to go back to the US and claim some Indian reservation land, open a casino, and you guys have to call me Chief Sitting 10. This is totally interesting, isn't it? I mean, Yeah, tell me about it. Yeah, maybe I should ask my mom. Oh, by the way, before you do the genetic tests, just a few warning. A lot of marriages have broken up. Okay. So this is another company that is in Singularity. I think they might have changed their name to Biocompiler now. They are trying to build a computer compiler to compile genetic factors to write a computer program, because programming your genes is similar to computer programming. The only difference is that instead of 0 and 1, instead of binary, it's actually base 4, ATCG. But if you program it, it will do exactly the same thing. If you want to grow a year, you write the right program, you will always grow a year. Okay, so I always give an example, right? Like, how would you go about doing this? So let's say you want to make your dog or your cat glow in the dark. Okay? So you go to this company called Complete Genomics, right? I mean, it's a really interesting company. So you don't have the genetic material of your dog, right? So you pull on your dog's hair or scrape his mouth or get saliva or make it spit, I don't know, do whatever you want, or cat. Send it to this company. Within 3 to 4 days and $2,000, they will send you this data that you can then download and chip into your computer. And then go to DNA 2.0. They have a software called Gene Designer 2.0. And okay, so the first part of the problem is solved, right? You got the gene of your dog. Now, but where do you get the glow-in-the-dark gene? Okay, well, the good news is go to open source DNA. It's available in a database there. Download the genetic glow-in-the-dark gene of, let's say, a jellyfish or a firefly or whatever, and play around with it, program it, send it to this company called DNA 2.0, and they will manufacture the genetic material for you, and then you can inject it into your cat or your dog. So it's Gene Designer 2.0. So you splice it. It's a program. I mean, you can learn it at home and do it at home. And a virus is nothing more than a software, and you can program your genes using virus. See, this is what I did. I was just telling, I think I was saying Ziki about how I went to this BioCurates lab, right? I went there, haven't done biology since high school, and that was in Klang, in Bahasa. Haven't done biology since high school. Went in there, in less than 2 hours, I actually took the genetic material of a glow-in-the-dark gene from a jellyfish and injected it into an E. coli bacteria. And the following day, they showed me my babies glowing in the dark. I had to flush it down the drain, but, it worked. See? And if you don't like green, the Koreans have, oh, seriously, I mean, the Koreans have actually developed one that can, glow in red. So, yeah, but sorry, right now it's only green and red. So, if you want other colors, then, that's an opportunity for you. So you can commercialize that. And what they're trying to do is bring back the mammoth. I think that will happen within the next 5 years, if not sooner. In fact, I think if you read 3 weeks ago, there was a frog that was already extinct in Australia that they actually revived, and it lived for about 14 hours, but they actually brought it back to life from an embryo, from a DNA embryo that they put into one of the preserved eggs. Robotics, that's the other big area that I think we should be looking at. This is a company called Intuitive Surgery. They developed this robot called Da Vinci robots. They allow you to do microscopic surgery remotely from the, you sit down there and you can play around. This is and do surgery there. If you guys watch Prometheus, right? Where the guy goes in and get operated out. Well, this one you still need somebody to do it. But the founder of the company, Catherine Moore, which is also a faculty member at Singularity, she really inspired me in terms of what you can do in the medical area with the robots. She said that you do not have to be a doctor to operate this. You just have to have a pair of good hands. So if your kids play video games and they're really good at hands, let them play, because they can do surgery on you in future. The only thing is that a doctor had to actually look at and see the procedure while it's being done. But the amazing stuff is if you ever want to do this at home in future, right, and you got an appendix need to be removed, you can get a best doctor in Mount Sinai to look at it and, get Wuhan to go on the machine and do an operation for you and remove your appendix. So, yeah. I mean, as you can see right now, it's connected by fiber optics to the machine because obviously the last thing you want is, the internet going down and then, you have the appendix hanging out. So went to Willow Garage. Have you heard of Willow Garage? They developed the ROS, the robotic operating system, made it open source. Some great benefactor actually made it and made it affordable. Well, when I say affordable, that robot, the PR2, cost $400,000, and that's the cost price. Each arm costs $100,000 each. How heavy do you think this robot can lift? 20 pounds. No, it cannot carry your bride to the room. Well, unless you got a really light wife. Anyway, but the thing is that the reason why it's so expensive is because it's very safe. So you can push it away and so forth, and it's mainly sold to universities and researchers and so forth. That guy in that video on the tele-robot is actually Jonathan Knowles, also a faculty member of design actually at Singularity. And he's a chief, chief innovator, I think, at Autodesk. He doesn't come to work anymore physically. He uses telepresence robot. And he's a very, very Scott-centric person. So he always wears a kilt when it comes to Singularity. So he said, the first question I know you guys are going to ask me is, what am I wearing? So I said, I'm not telling you because you can't see. But a lot of the Singularity guys actually got a telepresent robot and sent him to a cocktail party. They said that they met more interesting people, like Robin Williams and so on, as a tele-robot than as a real person. So hint, hint, Wuhan, you know, get some telepresent robot and all these guys can just... So we built a small one with a Lego Mindstorm with an iPad. So it's not that difficult to do. Okay, the other thing I want to impart to you guys is this new concept of 90-10. You know, how you can disrupt industry technology by making a product with 90% of the features of the existing product at 10% of the price. Okay, so the guy that did this is Chris Anderson. He wrote a long tail, free, and he's the editor of Wired magazine. He was, his daughter was really bored during the holidays, 9-year-old daughter. So he went out and bought from Radio Shack, you know, some components and developed a drone for less than $1,000. And that actually started a company called DIY Drones. It's actually an open source company. And obviously the Chinese came in and copied everything and started selling overseas. And he said he didn't mind because his drone design had a lot of bugs in it. But because the pirates wanted to sell their product, they actually ironed out all the bugs. So he's only selling in the US and didn't pose any problem at all, and he thought it was great. So, you know, a US Predator drone costs about $100,000 or more, right? And this drone costs like $1,000, like 10% of the price. So this is where, you know, this stuff is happening. And I don't know whether you guys know, like, you know, maneuvering a helicopter is a very, very complex task, right? The extra propellers and all that, which is why now they've got these quadcopters, which is actually very easily maneuverable. So this is what's coming now, you know, replacing a lot of technology. So one of the faculty at Singularity who came down to Australia to launch a program, David Roberts, he has a company called Halo Drop. And what they're doing is they're using drones to inspect the bridges and so forth, because in America, like the San Francisco Golden Gate Bridge, it's already outlived its design lifetime. So basically it has to be checked every 2 years. And right now they just had to fly a helicopter underneath and check all the pilings and everything else. But if you can send a drone that can just do that easily, that will save them a lot of money and effort in complying. Obviously, you guys know about crowdsourcing. I don't know whether you heard of Folded. On the educational side, Folded is a very interesting one. Have anybody heard of Folded? Or? Okay, Folded is a game you can download. Okay, it was designed by some researchers at the University of Washington. They were trying to find a way to fold protein so that you can fold it in such a way that you can actually find a way to be inserted into the HIV virus and kill it. The problem was they spent, I think, 18 months and $12 million and got nowhere. Very complex task using supercomputer. So they said, well, you know, this is actually similar to Rubik's Cube, solving complex problems, which the human brain is very good at doing. So why don't we crowdsource this, make it into a game and let them play, and, you know, somebody will find a cure for HIV by playing this game. So now the top high scorer for the Folded game is not a scientist, it's not a researcher, she's a personal assistant in UK. So you see, you never know, you know, who actually has the talent to find the cure for HIV. This is why, you know, when you think about education now, you should really have to think really cast your nets wide, because just because you didn't have formal education in a particular field does not mean that you don't have the skill set to actually solve the problem in that field. So I think that's a pretty important message to get across. Obviously, you guys heard of Pebble, right? And you know, crowdfunding and so forth. I think that's a fantastic way to actually source funding for those of you doing NGO projects, for example. I mean, this is a fantastic idea, right? Well, this is actually not as good as the other one. The original one was making a strap for a nano. Is it a nanopod? The you know, the square iPhone, the iPod. Yeah, iPod Nano, the small one. Originally, the guy wanted to make a strap. He needed 80 grand to get a factory molding and stuff like that. So he said, well, if you send me 60 bucks, I will send you the first 2 straps, or first strap in a unique color or whatever. And he raised over $10 million too. But think about it. He didn't give any equity away. He has pre-sold all his products. You know, and essentially a fantastic model. So the project that I worked on, originally I was working on a project to, on a health project. I wanted to create I want to use telepresent robots to take care of elderly people. when my mom was in ICU, you can't see her, you don't know what's happening. If you have a robot that can actually, in a hospital, that can move around and look at stuff or check her out, just make sure that she's fine, I think it'll be amazing. I mean, like one of the things I've noticed is that people from the south move to the north to get jobs, right? South America to North America, Africa to Europe. If you can create the jobs back home in their home country, then they wouldn't even need to migrate. Look at the factories in Japan, for example, right? They moved all their car industry to Thailand. If you could actually have robots working in Japan, but teach the guys to operate robots, because it's easier to teach them how to operate a robot than teach them how to write a program, you could essentially do that, quite efficiently. So that was my original project, trying to use it for healthcare and then into other areas. But I was asked to go and help a team that basically kind of went pear-shaped on security and worked on this project called Corruption Tracker. So basically, we used a platform called Ushahidi. Have you guys heard of Ushahidi? Yeah. Ushahidi is a crowd mapping program developed in Kenya. The lady in orange is Juliana Robotics. She's one of the founders. So she came to Singularity and told us about it and stuff. And it was the platform that brought up the Arab Spring and brought down the Tunisian government. It allowed people to report and map it immediately. It was open source. It's free. We developed this in 1 week. It's amazing, right? I mean, I was just a team leader, but my team members were amazing guys. We developed an app in 1 week, because we had 1 week left, and got it all up and running. And this is another one of my classmates, Helal Mashal from Israel. He developed a portable solar pack that you can actually open up and charge up, it's less than 14 kilos, and you can power for a family. And then, I actually spoke on the same stage as Reid Hoffman and Vinod Koshal. And the audience is like 500 people. It's amazing. I mean, you meet all these really interesting people. So the whole idea of Corruption Tracker was to basically give a voice to people who don't have a voice. Because normally the guy who paid a bribe gets what he wants. The guy who takes the bribe is not going to report it. So who is the one to get hurt the most? Those who can't afford to pay a bribe, right? You can't afford to pay a bribe. For example, in one of the developing world, you won't get your license for the drive or whatever, and you're stuck in the social, economic level that you're in. So what we wanted to do was allow them to give them a voice, because there's already sites like I paid a bribe, that's in India. Like, you already paid a bribe, and then you report it, but it's a bit late. I mean, you can still shame them into it, but we want to do that beyond that. So what we want to do is crowdsource it, use the Ushahidi platform, validate it against Palantir. Do you guys know Palantir? Yeah, there's another very interesting company, right? The guys from PayPal. They basically data mine and they sell their software to all the intelligence agencies around the world, and aggregate the information and so forth. So the whole idea was you take a photo of somebody bribing and you send it up, and we map it immediately, and it goes on a map, and you can see. So you can download it on our iTunes store. Okay, the other thing I'll talk about is social enterprise. Not so much on this on the corruption stuff. In America, there's a convergence of what's called a social enterprise between the NGOs and the corporations. Because what is the corporation's first duty of care? Maximize shareholders' profit, right? But at what expense? At any expense. So even if there's no social benefit, if you screw a few people along the way, as long as you maximize, because I was from the dark side, okay? I was an investment banker in Wall Street. So basically, what's happened is you got Occupy Wall Street. It's not a sustainable model. You cannot just maximize shareholders' profit without giving any social benefits. On the other hand, you got the NGOs who are dependent on donations. That's also not a sustainable model, because down the track, you're going to run out of cash. You've got to be profitable and sustainable. So there's a convergence of what's known as a social enterprise, where your first objective is to provide a social benefit, and your second objective is to be profitable. This is a project from last year's GSP program. I was very inspired by that program because some of my mates in Indonesia, 2 executive program graduates from Singularity, sponsored a competition and sent an Indonesian girl to Singularity, and she worked with 2 Israeli guys and developed this product called Medic Sensation. It's a glove that allows women to check their own breast for lumps and so forth. So essentially, if you think about it, in a third world country where you cannot afford to have an X-ray machine or a breast screening machine, you could basically ship this out. They could check for lumps. The information is recorded by the doctors and so forth, and you can actually see the lump progressing and so forth, and then be able to provide diagnostics stuff. See, the amazing thing about Singularity is that that girl would never have the opportunity to work with those Israeli guys because there's no diplomatic relationship. But at Singularity, they got together, and I think the 3 of them, maybe more of them, are actually now in Chile, in Startup Chile. For those of you who don't know about Startup Chile, the Chilean government, about 5 years ago, decided that they want to diversify their economy from mining into technology and innovation. They thought they would do what Malaysia, Singapore, China, and all the rest. They build a technology park, build and they will come. So they approached Singularity University, or one of the faculty, Vivek Wadhwa, and he advised them, don't do that. Innovation don't come from buildings, it comes from people. So instead of doing that, just give anybody with an innovative idea $40,000 seed money, and the only proviso is that you got to move to Chile for 6 months, then you can leave. And when they did that, amazing things happen. When you bring amazing people like you guys together, you know, you will form up your own meetup, your startups, and so on, and you rub off on the locals. And even when you move back to your home country, if the local guy in Chile wants to have a contact in Malaysia or in US or anywhere, they know who to talk to. He's been running for the last 5 years very successfully, and a lot of Singularity University spin-off companies are actually out there. But what I'm thinking is that, you know, Malaysia and Australia and so on would be better places because we speak English. You don't have to learn Spanish, which is actually a big barrier. Time zone is not so bad, and you're next to the powerhouse economies of the world. So yeah, I think we got all the right ingredients. Just need to have a bit of incentive to do it. This is Jack and Dracker. Have you guys seen Jack and Dracker? It's very famous. 15-year-old boy. 15-year-old boy developed a pancreatic test that cost pennies, right? I met him at Singularity last summer. Amazing guy, right? I mean, have you not seen his video? Have you seen his video? You guys? Okay, well, I don't know. Yeah, well, he got really happy when he won this competition. Can't play it. Anyway. So what happened now in Singularity, we also got, like I said, an incubator called SynBio, the first one. And in SynBio, there's a company called Modern Meadow. Amazing company, started by a father and son team. They sold off their first company called Organovo. They actually grow human organs and tissues from stem cells and for medical experiments. So they sold a company for like $800 million. So they set up this company called Modern Meadow in Singularity. And what they're trying to do is amazing. They're trying to grow beef and leather from stem cells. So you do not have to kill another cow to get leather or beef. You can actually grow it from stem cells. And the amazing thing, they showed us in the closed doors of NASA, because FDA has not approved it yet, obviously. They cook a burger from stem cells. They said it tasted great. That's the good news. The bad news is it cost $10 million. But the price is falling, as you know, exponentially. So, and the other thing about Singularity is once you're in the network, they also have a Singularity Angels network that has to be referred to from a Singularity alumni that will then put it out to the people like David Rose and all the other angel groups out there to get funding and so forth. So finally, I just want to leave you with a message that Larry Page tells people, you know, are you working on something that can change the world? You know, follow your passion, do something great, you know, impact the world. And that also changed my investment outlook nowadays. I want to look for products that have exponential growth, right, and can do a positive impact, as opposed to investing in small little companies that try to do their own little niche stuff. Except like one that I invested before I went to Singularity. It's like Grass Ads. I was telling somebody today. Grass Ads is a company that has robots that put signage on the grass. So yeah, go to my blog, or you know, you can search it on. You know, they actually they had a big win 2 years ago when Gillette paid them a lot of money to put Roger Federer's face on the Wimbledon lawn. The robot will draw out the outline, and they had to shave him with a lawnmower with foam on it. So that was pretty cool. That's it. Thank you very much.